Did you overthink a last minute text or pull away because it felt like they weren't trying enough? Well, you're not alone. These moments don't just happen in dating, they show up in all relationships, even when things get serious. Often, though, it's not about them, it's actually about how your attachment style and nervous system react. And today, secure attachment coach Beatrice Rosu explains why you might push too hard, pull away too soon, or misread signals and how to start connecting in a more confident, secure way at any stage of a relationship. Are you ready to finally understand your patterns and start attracting the love you actually want? Let's get this episode started. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to 52, the podcast where we explore the world of dating, relationships, and personal growth, helping you break old patterns, date with intention, and create the kind of love that lasts. I'm your host, Kelly, and today's episode is all about something we all crave, but often struggle to sustain: healthy, secure connection. And we're joined by someone who's transforming the way singles understand and experience love. She's a certified attachment coach specializing in integrated attachment theory, and she's helping people heal their relational patterns, remove emotional blocks, and finally build relationships that feel safe, authentic, and deeply fulfilling. After years in the fast-paced world of marketing and event production, she left the corporate grind to pursue her true calling, guiding people to connect from a place of confidence, clarity, and emotional freedom. She's also the host of the podcast, Let's Talk Relationships, where she dives into raw, heart-centered conversations about what it really means to love and be loved. So on that note, please welcome the inspiring Beatrice Rosu. Beatrice, how are you today?
Hi, thank you so much for this such a beautiful, warm welcome. Doing great.
Amazing. Where are you joining us from?
I am from Santa Monica, California, where it's always
Awesome.
sunny.
Well, meanwhile, we're here in New York and it's a
I
bit cloudy,
know.
chilly,
I'm
but
sorry to report that it's 75 right now, but
it's okay. Enjoy on our behalf, please. All of us
yeah,
New Yorkers. You can you can rub
absolutely.
it in a little bit. Totally get that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we are so happy to have you here joining us today. Your work around attachment and connection has been resonating with so many singles, especially those who feel stuck repeating the same patterns in dating. So to all of our listeners, you know what to do. Grab your coffee or your tea and get ready for a good one, because today's episode is going to get intense. And I cannot wait to unpack all of your insights today. So are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. So, Beatrice, our first question, you started your career in marketing and event production, but now you're helping people heal their relationships. So what made you decide to become an attachment coach?
So for me, it was a personal journey. And it really started back in 2019. And it was funny enough, this past weekend, I was in San Diego, where actually I was living at the time when this journey kind of started for me. So it was a
All
very
right.
reflective weekend to think back to that girl that was there at that time and who she's become today. And so for me, so much of it was personal. And in 2019, I was in a relationship, and it wasn't great, unfortunately. And it really got me thinking, well, what is a great relationship? I don't think I actually know. And I started to realize, like, I don't think I actually knew what it took to be in a healthy relationship. I knew that I wanted one, but I didn't know how to get there. And so for me, that's when that journey started. I started going to therapy, and I started reading a ton of personal help, personal development, relational books. Got into John Gottman, learned about the love languages, like some of the earlier surface things. And that really dove me, head straight into wanting to learn a lot more about the psychology behind relationships and what actually makes them work. And so that's sort of where the journey started for me. And, I went through a lot of the work myself and kind of came a little bit on the other side of that and realized there's something here that I want to dive more into and I want to share with others. And so I ended up starting the podcast a couple years ago, and that was an amazing
So
outlet for me. And eventually that led into me wanting to pursue coaching.
amazing. Love hearing that.
Yeah.
And one thing that you just brought up that's so true. A lot of singles, they think that they want a relationship and they're ready.
Hmm.
And it's not until they're actually in it and it happens to be the wrong one that they realize that they have a lot of work to do on their own first before they should have got into a
Yeah.
relationship, figuring out what they want,
Hmm.
what they need, all of that. So the fact that you brought that up right now from your own personal experience really resonates with a lot of
Yeah.
singles. So thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
when it came to coaching and you decided to become a coach, why did attachment theory stand out to you as such a powerful framework for helping people build healthy relationships?
Yeah. So I had a friend who handed me the book Attached. And
Oh, love that
yeah,
book.
it's a great book,
Great
a
book.
really great introduction to attachment theory. It's not super in depth, but I do think it's a good introduction. And she handed me this book and said, "This completely changed my life." She was going through a divorce at the time, and it was heartbreaking divorce, and just it was really tough on her. And she was in a really low place, and she said she read this book and a lot of stuff just started clicking. And so she gave me that book in 2019. I did not end up reading it for at least another year or two. I think it was
Huh.
maybe like two. I got into a lot of other books, and I remembered, I'm like, oh wait, there's this book Attached she was telling me about. Let me just dive into it. I've read every other book, might as well read Attached. And I
So
think
good.
it was the first time I felt really seen in a book. I felt like I finally had language to explain what I was experiencing in my relationships. And so that for me changed a lot. I felt like I had a better understanding of the why behind my behavior. I think before that I saw my behavior. I saw the patterns, but I didn't necessarily know why and where they were stemming
Right.
from. And so I think that's what attachment theory gave me. And once I went down that path, I went deep down that path. So I started studying integrated attachment theory, which is a body of work from Thais Gibson, who's also a psychologist. And yeah, it was really, really transformative.
It's amazing. That book is phenomenal, by the way. So
Hmm.
any of our listeners right now, definitely highly recommend reading that. It's by
Yeah.
Amir Levine. Great book.
Yes, it's fantastic. Also
Yeah.
love the book
Yeah.
Secure Love is another great one. Would highly recommend both of those books.
Love that. Love that you brought that up. And with the fact that you've worked with so many singles in their 20s to 40s, what are some of the biggest patterns or struggles you've seen people repeating in dating?
Yeah, so this one's a hard one to answer because, like I said, it really depends on your attachment, right? But I think as an overarching theme that I'm noticing is we're really allowing our past experiences to dictate how we show up in our relationships today. And oftentimes it's coming from an unhealthy place. And we're not getting curious enough as to why. So when I see clients, they come to me because they're fed up. They're like, I am dealing with the same patterns. I'm showing up the same way. I feel like I've gone to therapy or I've done this, I've done that, and like nothing's working. And so much of it is because they have a lot of head knowledge of what's going on, but they don't actually have the tools that'll help them grow from that place and change. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that I'm noticing is we're repeating the same patterns because we're not actually changing. All that we're doing is we know more, we have more head knowledge. And so I think that's why we continue to repeat the same patterns in our relationships. And so I think and the patterns are coming from past experiences, right? So if you were hurt before, then you're going to show up constantly feeling like, well, this person's going to hurt me, so I got to protect myself, right? And so I think that is the biggest thing I'm noticing because the protection comes whether you're an avoidant or you're anxious or you're fearful. Everyone's trying to protect themselves. It just looks differently, right? It looks differently in how that comes out in the relationship.
Yep. And, bringing that up now, you've said that everyone is on the defense when it comes to dating today. So, what does that mean exactly? And how is it showing up in modern dating?
Yeah. So I see this a lot. I feel like that's what is making dating even harder than it already is that we're just trying to find ways to get out, right? We're constantly playing defense. We're like, okay, if they're going to do this, I'm going to do this. If they're going to say this, I'm out. If they're going to ask for a coffee date, I'm done. If they're going to, ask for a date the same day, I'm out. Like we're trying to find reasons to get out of the situation and to get to just to say no to the date, right? And we don't even realize that we're doing this, but I've seen it a lot in how people are approaching me with their frustrations, right? So they're
Yep.
like, I have an example. I actually had a friend reach out to me and was like, oh, she just sounds just disappointed in dating and frustrated. And she's like, oh, this guy wants just asked me on a date and he wants to do the same day. Like that's so low effort. And I was like,
Hmm.
what about that is low effort? Well, he didn't even take into consideration my schedule or anything. And it's like, I feel so like dismissed or just.
Yeah.
And I really had to ask her, we dug in a little bit deeper. And what she came back with was like, oh man, I realized that when I was showing up, at the beginning of the conversation, I was really short and I was taking forever to respond. And now that he's wanting to do this date, now it's a problem, right? And so I think a big thing is we just don't we already assume the worst, so we prepare for that, right? Without giving someone a little bit of grace in dating. And so I think this is why we wind up and we see ourselves in these same type of dynamics, right? We're not actually checking ourselves to be like, okay, but how did I show up? In the really in the even the talking stage, right? And so she went back and realized, oh my gosh, yeah, I was like not responding because her thing was like, he doesn't sound excited to want to see me. And I said, well, one, you're a stranger. Two, men don't get excited the way women get excited. We have to really understand what that looks like for a man. A man's not like, oh my God, let me text all my guy friends and tell them about this date. Like, they don't respond that way most often. Some do, some don't. So we have to also be cognizant of what are our expectations and are they even realistic, you know? And so I think we go in with that mindset so that way anything that anyone tries to do, we're annoyed by immediately rather than being like setting a boundary or communicating a limit. Hey, unfortunately, I'm not available tonight, but I'm free Friday or Saturday at this time or this time. Would that work for you? Now you've given them an opportunity to be like, oh, actually, yeah, sounds great. Friday works. Instead of making it this big deal and you've created a storyline around something that you don't actually know to be true. You've just made it up. And so I see this a lot with my clients is what we do is we make up these stories before we even have all the evidence. And unfortunately, sometimes they come true because of that storyline changes how we show up, right? If we could be gracious and nice and extend a little bit of grace to somebody and be like, I don't know, maybe he happened just to be free that night. And how cool to have a spontaneous last minute
Like,
date.
have fun. Yeah, why not?
I love that. Like if I'm free and
Yeah.
you want to go, I'm like, great. So I think that's what I'm noticing. And I'm seeing this from a lot of different angles. And I think it is because people are just so burnt out from dating and they're frustrated by it that they're bringing that energy into dating and into apps.
Especially with dating apps right now, 'cause
Yeah.
it's so easy to just meet someone. But, one thing, bringing this up now, a lot of people assume someone's low effort if they ask them out last minute. So why do people jump to negative conclusions like that? And what's a healthier way to look at it?
Yeah. I think people jump to that because it's a repetition of a storyline that they've made up. And they make assumptions based on something, and some are going to argue. I can already hear the people in the back that are going to argue and say, but that's just my standard. That's fine. But someone doesn't know your standard, right? So we're assuming that this person knows our standard. So instead, I think we need to come at it as communicating. One, you could simply say, hey, I don't do same day dates, or I'm not available tonight. What's another night that works for you, right? You can switch the dynamic quite easily because people cannot read your mind. To some person, they may love spontaneity and they're like, ooh, last minute, I love it. I'm excited. To other people, they're like, no, I want more a planned out a date, right? So that's where we just need to have a lot more grace. And we also need to be the ones willing to communicate because so
Yep.
many times we want to write someone off, but we've actually never communicated to them what our standard even is to give them an opportunity to show up to that
You're
standard.
you're
Right.
100% right.
Another example I saw recently on Instagram, some girl had posted, she was frustrated with a guy. He sent her a WYD, right, as a message. And she was
Okay.
like, okay, I can ghost this guy. I can just block him or I can actually communicate. And she chose to finally do the thing that's hard and that most people don't want to do.
Communicate.
She
Yeah.
chose to communicate, and she had told him, "Hey, this is the standard for me, but getting a text message, WY, and I don't know exactly how she said it, but I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Getting this sort of message to me shows low effort, and I don't know if that's true for you, but I would appreciate full sentences." And the guy wrote back,
Sure.
was super gracious and was like, hey, you're actually totally right. Like, I can see how that can come off as really low effort. And I'm really sorry. You're right. And he changed his behavior. And I think that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to communicate. We just want to be like, oh, he sent WID. Well, then shoot, he's so low effort. That's so lazy. He's a man. I don't want to tell him how to speak. That's how people talk. That's what I hear all the time. But instead, why don't we be the one that actually communicates what our standard is? Because you might actually call someone to actually meet you there, right?
Yeah.
So
And not
that's
only that, like you bringing this up right now, like you're talking about low effort. It's also low effort for someone not to explain what they need. So
yep.
if you want effort, you have to put in effort. It takes two to tango. So if you're gonna want that, you need to be that. So put in the effort and communicate. And when it
Yeah.
comes down to it, though, setting boundaries, how can someone tell the difference between protecting their boundaries and pushing people away because of fear or past hurt?
Yeah. So with boundary setting, so much of it stems from the intention behind the boundary. I'm actually working with a client on this right now. She leans a little bit more on the anxious side. She's kind of a fearful avoidant, but leans a little bit more heavily on the anxious side. So for her to set a boundary, it's like almost non-existent. Like anxious people don't really set boundaries. They're very bad at doing that because to them, a boundary is a block, a wall, something that means a loss of connection, right? And in her context, she started talking to someone. He's a lot more intense than she's used to. But she's like, but he has everything that I really value. He's just more forward. And I'm used to guys that are more passive. And I said, great, you want more forward, right? But now it doesn't feel normal. It feels a little bit like too much. And so with her, what we're working on is a simple boundary being set like, hey, I'm enjoying getting to know you. I'm really glad we connected. But something I'm sensing is things are moving a little bit faster than I'm feeling comfortable with. Do you mind if we just kind of slow the conversations down and focus a little bit more on some lighthearted conversation? That is a boundary, right? The intent behind it was simply she started noticing she was feeling uncomfortable. And it wasn't like she was angry or mad or frustrated. She was like, I don't know, I'm just feeling anxious. So we really worked on where is the anxiety stemming from? And we realized it was just the speed of the relationship. Fearful avoidants don't like to move as quickly as maybe super anxious people or avoidants. Avoidants are much slower. Anxious are really quick. Fearful avoidants are kind of in the middle. And so that was a really great way that we set a boundary with her. She was able to communicate that to this person. And again, the boundary wasn't set from anger. Now, how we know that the boundary is being set out of as a protection mechanism, it's when we're angry, we're resentful, we're frustrated, and we've reached our limit. That's usually a really good indicator that we probably should have set the boundary a long time ago and we waited way too long. And now we're frustrated and now we're building a wall. We're not actually creating a boundary. So much of it comes from our intent of how we're setting the boundary and where our nervous system is at when we set the boundary, right? When we're calm and collected, a boundary is not that hard to set. You're like, hey, I'm feeling like this. Do you mind if we do this? It should be conversational, should be casual, right? And then if someone isn't getting it, you start to get a little more stern with the boundary. Okay, they didn't understand. This is where my line is, right? And if they don't understand, then you go, this is where my line is, and this is the consequence if it doesn't get met, right? You kind of escalate it little by little. But the protection is when we jump really strongly to a boundary that doesn't actually allow someone in at all. So it could be like, he sent WID. I'm done. I'm going to ignore him. I'm never responding back. You're setting that because you're frustrated and angry. You're probably using a lot of past hurts, past annoyances. You're bringing it into the present. And then you're setting a really, really strong boundary versus like the girl on Instagram had done, just stating, hey, to communicate with me, I'm going to need full sentences. So you either choose to meet me there or I have the information now that I need to walk away, to communicate that I'm walking away. So it's really, really the intent behind the boundary and honestly where our nervous system is as we set them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the case where you're bringing up where the guy just typed, WID instead of typing fully, what are you doing? And the girl responded like, okay, I need full sentences instead of just ignoring him. In that case, she didn't create a story in her head
Mhm.
that this guy doesn't care, he's not interested, all of that. In this case, she assumed that he has good intentions, he is interested, and that she needs to communicate what she needs, which is
Mhm.
great. But you talk a lot about stories we do tell ourselves in dating and how those assumptions we make in our heads, how they could affect us, how we move forward, whether in a,
Mhm.
in a constructive way or a destructive way. So why do we do that? And how can it hold us back from real connection?
Yeah. So storylines are something that I really implement in my practice with my clients because the stories that we believe about ourselves and about people around us is how we live our lives. And it's also the filter that we see everything through. And the same situation could happen to three different people, and every single one will have a different interpretation because the lens of how they're seeing that is through these storylines. So let's say someone who feels they're just not good enough, they're never going to amount to the person that they want to be, right? Let's say someone says, hey, I'm not really that interested. I didn't really feel a connection. Sorry, moving on. to them, they're devastated. And what did this mean about me? And oh my gosh, like I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not pretty enough. Maybe they didn't think I was smart enough. Like now we're going down a spiral of self-worth because that's the story we see. We never felt good enough. So when we see rejection, whether it's at work, whether it's in relationship, wherever it is, we filter it through that storyline. I'm not enough. It's the same storylines that, with someone who's avoidant. Maybe they feel like, well, I'm going to always be trapped. So when someone is showing them more love and affection and is actually excited to be with them, they're filtering that through, oh my gosh, I'm going to be trapped and my life is going to be over. I'm going to lose myself in the relationship, right? So those are the storylines that we are operating through based on how people are interacting with us. And so this is a huge part of my coaching program is we really look to identify what are your stories, because that is how you will always continue to operate. And these stories are subconscious, right? These are stories that have been built over time and usually stem from our childhood. As a lot of psychology will tell us today, a lot of how we show up really stems from how we were raised as kids. And even sometimes in our adult relationship, if we had traumatic relationships as adults, we can get new storylines layered onto the storylines of childhood. And what does our subconscious do? It likes to find reasons and examples that prove our stories to be correct. And then we just continue to reiterate the story over and over, over and over. And then that just becomes more embedded in our day to day.
Yeah,
And so,
100%.
and this is why I tell people, the first step is getting curious. Why? Do I know these things to be true in my life? Do I really think I'm not that good enough? Why don't I feel like I'm that good enough? So I think that's really the important thing. And it's crazy once you start doing this work. And with some of my clients, they start to dig in and they're like, oh my gosh, this explains so much of why I operate in life the way I do. For some clients I've had, they've connected the dots, finally understanding why they never go for the promotion, why they've never really tried to build the business, why they've never tried to do something that's a little bit more, they've realized because they never felt good enough. So why bother trying? And so, and there's many storylines. There's, I don't belong. I feel I'm dumb. I'm stupid. I feel like I'm going to be trapped. I feel like I'm going to be betrayed. Betrayal is a huge one. I'm going to be abandoned for those who are anxious. That's a storyline. They always feel like they're going to be abandoned. So when they don't get a text message back within a couple hours or an hour, they're like, this person doesn't like me. They're going to leave me. I'm going to be abandoned. So as you can see, it can get pretty intense with whatever our storylines are and how we actually show up and interact. That's where the anxieties come from. That's where a lot of our avoidance comes from. It really, really stems, so much of it stems from these embedded subconscious stories.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that 100%. And, in dating specifically, or maybe even in the early stages of a relationship, can you share one common story that you see people tell themselves that causes them to give up on someone too soon?
Yeah, and it depends on their attachment. So for someone who's anxious, they will start to feel like this person doesn't like them or they're going to be abandoned. And to prevent that, they try to please and over please. They'll neglect their own needs. They won't speak up. They will placate, right? They'll try to play small just so they can make sure they don't get left, that someone doesn't leave them behind, right? For someone who's on the avoidant side, to them, relationship means losing themselves, feeling trapped, feeling like they're going to lose their autonomy and their independence. And so what you'll often see with avoidance is as things get a little bit more serious, even in early dating, if they're starting to like the person, if they're seeing, oh gosh, this is going really well, they start to get triggered in their avoidance. And they'll start to pull back a little because this doesn't feel safe. I'm not used to this. And then all these storylines start to happen. I'm going to be trapped. I am going to lose myself. And then they'll start to pull away. So the anxious will start to push in too much, which will be too much pressure for the relationship. And then the avoidant will pull away, which will confuse the other person. Or if the other person is anxious, will cause them to push even further in. And so you can see how these storylines really impact how we show up even in the early stages of dating, right? If you're anxious and you fear a lot of the abandonment and the rejection, you'll then make stories up of like, okay, this person doesn't like me, or this person's this person's that. I'm going to ghost. I'm going to not respond. I'm going to whatever, right? Because we don't want to get hurt. And so again, this goes back to playing defense, right? We don't want to get hurt, so we're going to put our walls up right away. And that really prevents connection early on in the relationship or early on even in the dating phase.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And on the flip side, how can someone tell when a relationship actually isn't healthy, when it's not just a story but a real red flag?
You really have to check in with yourself. So much of the time when you are on the insecure spectrum, so if you're anxious avoidant, we're constantly looking at, are they choosing me? Are they going to choose me? Versus, am I choosing them? Because when we're more on the choosing side, we can actually start to see the red flags a little bit more. So I would say it's really a matter of flipping the script and understanding,
Right.
how does this person actually make me feel? Well, if I am feeling anxious all the time, what is it about? Is it because they're not communicating well enough? Great. Can I actually communicate to them and ask for a need to be met? Hey, I actually would love, maybe more consistent communication. What does that look like for you? Where could you meet me in that? Right? So we can start to open up the conversation flow. I think that really, really helps, start to see if someone can't meet you there after you've communicated the need. Now you have proof.
Yeah. That they're not for you.
Exactly. It's not a storyline. Now you actually have, oh, I've asked for something to be met. They clearly cannot meet it. And whether they can't, whether they don't want to, whether they're incapable, it doesn't matter. The end of the day is it can't be met. And you have to decide, can I live with that or can I not? Right? And so you start to look at people's patterns and how they're showing up versus being so focused on being chosen. And that's
Love
often
that.
what's happening, especially when you're a little bit more on the anxious side. You want to be chosen, right? So you're so focused on, what do I need to do? How am I showing up? How can I please more? Versus being like, wait, do I even like this person? What are the qualities I like about this person? Are they showing up for me the way I need? Even let's say after I've been able to communicate these sort of things, are we aligned in our core values? Do I even know what my core values are? If I don't, well, I need to do some homework and understanding, what are my core values? And then decide, are we even aligned? Do we see the same future? Do we want the same things, right? When we're so focused on being chosen, we're not asking those questions. We're not even looking at that half the time. We're so
Right.
focused on just being chosen, right?
Yeah.
I had
100%.
a prospective client reach out to me, and she was so focused on getting this person to see her, to show up for her, to be emotionally available, to communicate his needs, to communicate his feelings, that she didn't realize that she completely lost herself in that relationship entirely. She neglected all of her needs. She wasn't showing up. She was constantly anxious, constantly looking at the other person. She could not
Mhm.
see the cost that it was having on her life, on her health, on her peace, because she was so focused on other. And so that's what I would say in early dating. It's really important to just pull yourself back a little bit from the stories of, oh my God, the future and this, and you're building a life with someone you don't really know, and really start to ask yourself the harder and deeper questions. And not so much, am I being chosen, but am I also choosing? And is this someone I want to be with?
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of healing to move forward and make sure that we're dating the right people and picking the right people for us. So
Yeah.
let's move on to then, when it comes down to healing attachment patterns. Before we get into that, just for our listeners who might not
hmm
be familiar with attachment theory, can you quickly explain what attachment theory is and the three different attachment styles, main attachment styles?
Yeah. So, attachment theory is a body of work that some psychologists had studied children and how they were attaching to their caregiver, usually their mothers, but can be any caregiver. And what they realized is that they found that there were about four different attachments. You have your insecure, and then you have your secure attachment. In your insecure attachments, you have your anxious attachment, you have your avoidant attachment, and then you have your disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment style. And so they realized that how children were cared for and reacted to when they maybe cried out or needed help was a really good indicator of how they would show up in their adult relationships. So, for an example, someone who's anxiously attached, their caregivers were probably hot and cold, right? So they became really hypervigilant to see, okay, are they going to come to me when I cry? Or are they not going to come to me? Am I going to have to soothe myself? Am I going to get love attention today, or am I going to get a cold shoulder today? So With anxious people, their caregivers were likely very hot and cold in how they were raised. For someone avoidant, they associated love with usually a lot of pain, or they were parents were overbearing. And so to them, love was just overwhelming, and it caused a lot of this feeling of feeling trapped, right? So it could be sometimes an unhealthy parent could have gone through, let's say they were, I don't know, depressed, or they don't, it doesn't always have to be unhealthy, but um they associated their love and care from their mother as just overbearing and overwhelming, right? And then the fearful avoidant is a very interesting one. It's the least likely one that people to have, but it's also the most confusing because they associate love with both something they really want and desire, but also with fear and abandonment. And so likely they also experience the hot and cold, but in much more extremes. And so that is how we learned how to relate as we became adults. And so that's why this theory is so powerful, because so much of how we show up today, if we never healed it, is exactly what we learned as children. And there's survival mechanisms, right? As kids, when you're young, you don't know much more than survival. You're like, I need to survive. I need to eat, I need to sleep. That's pretty much it. And so when you'd reach for your parents or your parents would care for you, over time, you learned to relate to your parents depending on how they showed up for you. And so that's what we're seeing now in our adult lives. And we're seeing it play out in our relationships and in our dating lives.
Thank you for explaining that. That was very helpful. And how can understanding your attachment style help you date differently and attract healthier love?
Attachment theory is really great because it gives you a good foundation to understand where your patterns are coming from and maybe uncover some patterns that you would have never really known. That's what it did for me. I think when I understood it more, I was like, oh gosh, this is why I get so anxious. Because I would get so anxious in dating, like so anxious about, did they like me? Did they not? I'm a recovering fearful avoidant. So I got both sides of the spectrum. I'd get incredibly anxious and then I'd also get incredibly avoidant at the same time. And it's very confusing when you deal with that. And funny enough, but a lot of my clients are fearful avoidance. And it's because you get to a point where you're just like, I'm so frustrated and confused as to, like, I'm sick of myself. I think that's where I see a lot of clients come to me. They're just like, I'm just sick of myself and I'm sick of making the same mistakes over and over. And so they're like, I need help. And that's what thing with healing through this is, we have to learn new ways to relate. And that takes time, and it takes breaking a lot of patterning. And so much of that is also getting to our subconscious. So the stories I was telling you about earlier, right? We have to dig into those stories and get curious about what are we making them mean. And so I think a really easy tip for people who are much more aware of their attachment, right? Maybe you go and read the book Attached and you're like, oh my God, I'm this. Start to get curious about when you get triggered or when something frustrates you, like, what am I making this mean about myself or the situation? Do I know that to be 100% true? Usually your answer is no, because you don't have enough evidence to be like, yes, that's true, because it's the story you've created. And then you can ask yourself, well, what else could that mean? And this is a really, really great pattern to start implementing or just exercise, because what it's getting you to do is it's stopping you in your conscious mind from subconscious stories just playing on autopilot, right? You're actually stopping for a minute, holding back and being like, wait, that this is coming up again. It's the story of, I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to be left. Do I know that to be 100% true? And what else could it be other than that?
But do you believe that someone can heal while they're dating, or is it better to take a break and focus on themselves first?
I think it's a yes and no. So if you're early on in your journey, in your healing, I think it's really important to take time for yourself and really get curious about you. Get curious about you know, who you are, your own patterns. And this doesn't have to be months and months. It could just be a little bit. Take a beat, take a break, and try to understand who you are, how you're showing up, and start working toward improving a lot of those things. So making different decisions. But a lot of our attachment wounds get healed when we're in relationship and when we are dating, right? So yeah, you can do a lot of the work on your own. And I think it's very important. Like if you feel like, a lot of women say men are really emotionally unavailable, and, or I feel like I'm repeating the same patterns. I keep falling for the emotionally unavailable. Start to get curious why. Start working through that stuff before you go back out and dating. Because we don't really know ourselves. And then we don't actually know what we're looking for. We don't know what our core values are. We don't really know what we really stand for. And so what we're doing is we're trying to figure all that out in dating, but it gets messy because you're now mixed with people who already know what they want, and now you're kind of you're trying to learn all this while dating.
No,
And so
absolutely.
I think there's things you can learn while dating, but I also think there's things you need to get really clear on before you start dating, right? Like, let's say you're like, you know what? I'm just looking for fun. I don't really want a serious relationship. Well, then when you go out and you date, that better be super freaking clear in your profile, right? The problem
Yep.
is people are going out saying they want relationship, they want long
And they
term,
do, they might, but like not maybe
but
right
they're
away.
not ready or capable of that
Right.
relationship. So we
Right.
have to really get serious and ask ourselves, what are we actually capable of, you know? And
Yes.
so,
Great point.
yeah, because I think capacity and desire are two different things. You can desire a relationship, but have no capacity for it. And so I think it's really important to get clear about that and really understand what is my capacity for the relationship that I actually deeply want. And if I don't have the capacity for it, then that means I need to do some work. So I would say take a beat, take time to do that work on your own, get really solid and secure in yourself and who you are, because you're going to show up in dating so much better. And you're also going to be able to weed out people that you don't align with, right? You're not going to be upset anymore. Like when you're so secure and you're so confident in yourself, you're going to walk out there on the dating field and you're like, "Yeah, nope, I'm good. You nope." Like it's so much easier, and you stop taking everything so personal. I think right now
And
we have more pain in dating because we take everything so personal. We get so mad. He sent YWD. How dare he? Like, am I not worth more? It's like, whoa, you have made this whole story about you. Could be someone
yeah.
just, that's how they text. Period. You
Yeah.
know, that's a big thing is taking the time to get really secure in who we are. And again, there will be healing that will be done in relationship, but it also needs to be in a safe container.
100%. And I love that you made a clear distinction between what you actually want and what you're capable of actually having in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
which is something people don't realize. Even
No.
even if someone's not looking for something casual, they want something real, they might not be ready for it. They need to do the
Mm-hmm.
self-work. So having that capacity though is very important, and the awareness of that. I'm very
Yeah.
happy you brought that up.
So to a note on that is also not only for the other person to realize the capacity, but for you as someone doing the choosing, you get to realize, does this person actually have capacity to be in a relationship? And sometimes we have to be the ones to make that decision and say, I don't think you have the capacity in your life. You may think you do, but based on your actions, I don't think that you do. And we have to be the ones willing to call that out and walk away if it doesn't align with what we want. And again, that puts us in the driver's seat, being the one choosing.
Got it. That's amazing. And for someone who keeps attracting the same type of partners, maybe emotionally unavailable or inconsistent, where's the best place to start healing so that they can start attracting the emotionally available, the consistent?
Yeah. I wish there was a simple answer for this, but the problem with that is it's multi-layered, right? We attract what's familiar and we attract what we're comfortable with. So if we only have ever known one type of relationship, that's generally what we go for. And so that without, let's say, doing deeper work on a surface level, changes we can make is to start dating outside of our type. So
Right.
stop dating the thing that feels comfortable and normal. And it's a challenge because sometimes we're like, well, this kind of feels boring or this feels this. And we're going to, you feel the internal fight. You're just like, I don't know, you know, but the more it's more exposure, the more we expose ourselves to people that are not what our normal type is, the more we'll start to get used to that also. Because everything, we can train ourselves out and into anything. And so I think in a practical way, without obviously there's a lot of deeper work that would need to be done there, but from a more practical standpoint, I really think it's trying to choose people that are outside of your norm.
Love
It may
hearing that.
surprise you.
100%. I've heard many stories at this point now of people who ended up with their husband or their wife because they went out of their comfort zone, and they
Yeah,
always go, it was someone I would have never dated or looked at, but it happened to be the person I married. So the fact that you brought that up definitely is
exactly.
true. And the last question on this topic is, what's one small daily practice you recommend for becoming more secure in your relationships?
I always ask, this is the I make my clients ask this question is what story am I telling myself right now in this situation? You will be shocked at how repetitive those stories are. I have a client right now who is doing that. And she's like, oh my God, I can see myself constantly try and tell myself the same freaking story over and over and over. And it's the first thing that pops in my head. And so I would say that is such a quick surface level way of just starting to get curious. What story am I telling myself right now? What am I making this mean about myself, about the situation? Do I know this to be 100% true? What else could it possibly mean? And how am I different than this story that I'm telling myself? Those are
Yeah.
really good questions just to get comfortable. Start asking yourself, because the way we change is we do things differently. At the very basic nature of how we change, it's not knowing more, it's not understanding more. That's helpful. But to actually see change, we have to do things differently. It's like you can't expect to gain muscle and, get really fit if you're doing the same thing. It's like to see change, you have to do things differently than what you've
Yeah.
been doing. It's the same thing for personal development, for emotional work. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is they feel like, well, I'm reading the books, I'm doing all the things that I'm not seeing change. And it's because we're not actively trying to change. So that to me is a really, really easy beginner way to just start to get curious about our own programming, is by simply just saying, what story am I telling myself right now in this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And now moving into coaching for
Mhm.
men and women, you've mentioned that women usually sign up for coaching faster, while
Yeah.
men often just, dip their toes in first. So why do you think that is?
So I get a lot more men reaching out when I target men and women. I get a lot more men that reach out. And I really do believe a lot of it is because they don't really have anywhere else to turn. And so
Yeah.
they want to be able to talk to somebody about their problems. They're a lot more shy when it comes to actually signing on for coaching. There could be ego involved. There could be, I don't know if this is going to work for me. I've never really done personal development work. So there's always a little bit of hesitancy, I think, with that. And what I find with women is women seem to be more readily available to want to start working on things. And usually it's because they've already done a lot of the emotional processing. I think where we're seeing a disconnect, and we're seeing this in dating and in our relationships, I think women have far surpassed men in terms of emotional intelligence. They have really worked hard to better analyze themselves and see their own patterns. They're more willing to go reach for the self-help book. They're more willing to watch the podcast, all of that when it comes to self-development. I think men are starting to get there, but they're a lot further behind. And so when I ask them, well, what patterns are you noticing? A lot of the time, they can't even tell me what patterns. They just know something isn't working. Right. And then so my job is then to work with them to identify what are those patterns actually that are holding them back. And so we have a lot more work to do kind of upfront. Whereas a lot of my female clients, they kind of they're already processing a little bit, and they understand how things work to a degree. So I think we're seeing that imbalance, I think, in our dating world and our relationships. And I think that's also causing a big disconnect and why dating feels harder. I think there's an emotional intelligence and availability disconnect. And I don't think it's a fault of anyone's. I do believe we've conditioned men one way and we've conditioned women another way. And it's also society that's, gotten us to where we are today.
That's a great point you bring up. Actually, I believe there was a survey or a poll that Match Group published last year that said that one of the top 5 traits people look at now is emotional maturity and
Hmm.
intelligence. The fact that that's right now prioritized, but there's that disconnect makes
Hmm.
it even harder. So,
Yeah.
what's one thing you wish that more men understood about doing the inner work before or during dating?
That they would be one of the most attractive men out there. No,
Yep.
I think
Yep.
it's
Cheers to
so
that.
cheers to that.
So
All
all
the
the men that do the
men,
men that
because
do the work.
I'm going to drink my tea to that.
Coffee.
But
New Yorker.
I
I'm so New
know.
Yorker, LA right now.
So
You with your
I
tea and
know
me.
with my
Is it herbal? Is it
it
herbal?
is.
Oh my God, no,
It's
mine's full on out caffeinated.
it's slippery elm.
Cold brew.
I did
Mm.
have coffee this morning though, so
Oh, okay, very good. Okay, so you got it in. You got it in
we
there.
got it in.
But anyway, no, you're 100% right. They would be so much more attractive if they did
Yeah.
and they do. It takes a little bit longer to get there.
It does. And I think, like I said, I think it's also societal. So I think we have to give men a little bit more grace in terms of that. They were never raised with that mindset. They were not raised for them to be emotional and to share their feelings. And at least millennials, our generation, I think we're seeing a change as we get into like Gen Z. But I think and obviously Gen Alpha too, as parents are raising younger children, they're recognizing the importance of that, especially just in today's society. So I don't want to fault men for it, but I do think that that doesn't erode them from the responsibility to start learning some of these skills, because these are learned skills, right? Being able to communicate, understanding emotions, being able to connect on an emotional level with a female, these are learned traits. So it's not something that you're naturally born with. They're things that you're learned. So while I do think it's not doesn't come as easily for men, I do think still think their responsibility to go out and and to heal those parts and to learn these skill sets, because they're going to be more and more required when it comes to relationships. And I just think it's something that for the guys that are more emotionally intelligent, I do think, they're much more eligible in some ways. It's a lot of what women are looking for.
And, when it comes down to it, though, how can men and women stop blaming each other, pointing the finger at the other one and saying it's your fault, and start taking more responsibility and accountability for their own role in the dating
Yeah.
process and in the relationship, especially early
Yeah.
on?
Absolutely. This is the thing that I want to see more of, and this is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, because the gender roles that I'm seeing going on right now in our dating society, and it's just I'm so over it. Like I'm like, okay, waving the red flag, we got to cut. Clearly, what we're doing isn't working, right? Everyone's feeling the pain of it, and we're just like I said, we're on defense, both sides just battling each other out, right? And I think we have to extend more grace. And I think we also have to become the people that we want to see out there. So I find it hilarious when some people, they say how they hate ghosting and while no one communicates and no one's excited to go on the date with them and this and that. Then I start to question, well, how are you showing up? Are you excited? Are you asking for the confirmations? Are you reaching out and doing this? Are you setting your availability? Are you asking someone to hang out? Like we have to be, I think sometimes women are well, I wholeheartedly, I'm very much more traditional when it comes to like pursuit. I do think men should pursue women, but it doesn't mean that women don't play any part. And I think that's where there's a disconnect too, because I think women just want to sit there and wait. But I do think we need to open up the conversation, open up the door, and allow someone to then pursue. Right. And so I think we have to really take a hard look at ourselves. Are we actually showing up as the people that we want to be with out there? Am I actually communicating? Like, what if someone just completely ghosted me and I have no idea? What if I sent the WYD and I didn't know that someone was offended by that or that it was lazy? I just thought that's how I talk. That's how I text my friends. That's how I text everybody. That's how I text. And then to find someone just ghosted me and I'm like, okay, I have no idea, right? How would you feel if that was done to you? We would not like it. We'd be like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Like, how dare they just ghost me and did it, So it's like, okay, well then what's my responsibility in this? Oh yeah, I can actually communicate. I can share what I really need. And, I had a friend do this recently. I challenged her. I said, you're complaining a lot about this, but have you ever thought about communicating that you need someone who's going to communicate more consistently? The guy was not responding. He was responding every like 3-4 days. And, I told her, I challenge you with that. It took her a couple of days and she's like, okay, fine, I'll send it. And so she just sent the guy, was like, hey, it was great getting to know you, but I need someone who's going to be much more consistent in their communication. No hard feelings, but I wish you the best. The guy wrote back so fast and was like, you are so right. You deserve so much better. I'm so sorry I haven't been able to show up for you in the way I really want to.
Good.
He was like, I'd be happy to get on a call and explain what's been going on personally. Like he was so quick to be like, oh my God, I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. When she could have just ghosted him and never responded to him again and unmatched him.
Exactly.
Right? I think because we're online, we've made people less human. And
Yeah,
we have to
that's been
remember
the
there's
issue, and AI is not helping at all with
it's
that.
not. We have to remember there's another human on the other side. Like I sometimes go days and don't respond on Hinge because I'm like overwhelmed with everything I have going on. It's nothing personal to those people. But if someone was like, hey, that's not cool, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, yeah, I need to be better about that. Thanks for calling me out. Like I need to be checked on these things, right? It doesn't make me less ready in certain cases. And so I think that's what we need to do. We need to start showing up as the people that we want others to be. But we got to set that example. And until we do that, like we're going to just keep perpetuating the same problems over and over and over. And it's just going to continue everyone's frustration in dating. Like treat people with respect. don't unmatch. If you're going to unmatch someone, tell them why you're unmatching them. You can just say, hey, I'm realizing I'm not really interested in, if you don't want to get really detailed, you can make it vague. Hey, I'm realizing I'm not really interested in pursuing this any further. It was great chatting with you. Wish you the best. Done. Send. Moving on.
You don't even need to send a reason. Just let them know.
Yeah, let them
That's
know.
it.
And so the more that we can do that, I really do feel like we're going to be less frustrated in dating, right? The less we make people's actions mean something about us, the less we're going to be frustrated with dating. And so that's my biggest advice, is that's how we stop these gender wars, is we stop making up stories about people that we don't even know. We stop like making someone else pay for the sins of our past, because we maybe made the wrong decision also. So
100%.
yeah.
No, I agree. And just to summarize those 2 points, because I think they were so important for everyone to hear. Just again, when you're saying you want X, Y, and Z in a person, like if the girl is saying, and like they say this all the time, they want a guy who's fit and works out, whatever it may be. Are you fit? Are you working out? Like, be what
Mhm.
you want. Go and do the same
Absolutely.
thing. Work on yourself. And then when it comes to guys courting girls, like, just like traditional way of doing things. And again,
Mhm.
to each their own. However, anyone wants to do it is totally fine. But like, if someone is interested in that traditional way of being pursued, you don't just sit there, which you brought up. You don't just sit
Mhm.
there and like wait for him to knock down the door and come in. No, you actually, this is really funny. Someone one time said, you as the girl provide the wood and let the
Mhm.
guy set the fire.
Mhm.
Like, give them a little something to work with. It's
Mhm.
not it's not just one person does all the work. So you brought
Yeah.
that up, and I'm also really happy you brought
Yeah.
that point. And when it comes to it, have you seen any breakthrough stories from your male clients that gave you hope for the dating world?
Yeah. I mean, well, one, I just had a friend of mine recently tell me this, which I was like, oh, proud moment. But he had said, he's like, I actually took your advice, and I'm actually like, after a first date, I'm actually telling the person, hey, I'm not interested in a second date, or I'm not, I thought you were great. I'm not really interested in pursuing this. Wish you the best. And he's like, I realized that what I was doing, I was making women spin because they didn't know why I wasn't going in. I just let it be and moved on to the next person. And so that was huge. And it was as simple as just me challenging someone on that. And he's like, I get it. I get it. I see what happens to you when that doesn't happen. And now he's like, I don't want that to be the people that I do that with. So that was
Yeah.
huge. And I have one of my recent clients that I'm working with right now. We had a really big breakthrough because he didn't realize this, but he was realizing now that he was not doing any of the choosing. He was only dating women that showed interest in him. And what that was doing is he was saying yes to women that he was mostly unaligned with, but because they showed interest, he thought, oh, I'll give it a go. He took himself completely out of the driver's seat and was kind of just a backseat driver at this point, not even a passenger princess. He was full on backseat driver. And he started realizing that actually locked him into a lot of really unhealthy relationships. And because of that, he was attracting really dominant women. And
Oof.
women, some kind of had a little bit more narcissistic personalities. Some were just incredibly domineering in the relationship. So it made him really small in that. And he couldn't understand why, because he's like, that's not actually what I want when I sit back and think about it. But I somehow find myself in these patterns. And so with a lot of the work that we did, we actually realized where that was showing up, not just in his relationship, but it was also showing up at his work. It was showing up with his family. He was taking kind of this backseat driver throughout his whole life. It wasn't just relationship. And so that's what I want to tell people. Like, when you start doing this work, it's not just in relationships that you start to see
Everywhere.
change. You see it everywhere. And that's why this is so powerful. And a lot of my clients leave my program and they're like, but wait, I want to still work with you because I want to now work on this and I want to work on this, because they're starting to see that this work isn't just relational in terms of romantic, but it's relational in all areas of our life. So I think
I'm
for
love
him, when
hearing
we
that.
started recognizing that, now when he's pursuing, he's recognizing like, oh, I get to do the choosing. And the reason why he didn't want to do the choosing was he didn't want to face rejection. And he realized rejection was really, really a big fear of his. Because he was like, well, if I don't get the girl, then why do I bother? So it was a very like zero sum game with him. And so it's been great. And we're still working through that with him right now. We're trying to work through that at his work and in relationship. But that was a really big breakthrough of understanding, why do I keep ending up in the same relationships? Well, one, you're not doing the choosing.
That's phenomenal. And next up, we're gonna actually do some rapid fire questions to
Oh,
wrap up this
okay.
episode. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
Take a little break, take a little breather for a sec.
Okay, gotta get my herbal tea.
All right. So, first up, a lot of singles today feel drained or hopeless about dating. So, what would you say to someone who feels like there are no good people left?
I think you have to change your mindset. There might not be good people where you're looking, or you don't see good people at the frequency you see all the ones that are not ready. Those are the ones that tend to be on the apps. They're in droves and in numbers. So my suggestion is change how you're dating. If you're on the apps and you're frustrated, get off the apps. Go join a club. Go start a sport. Go do something that's outside of your normal everyday life and see if you might meet someone there.
Love that. Next up, what's one mindset shift that can help someone start dating with hope and openness again?
I think it's going to be changing how you view dating. So if you're going to keep speaking over dating as horrible, terrible, I hate it, all that, that's what you're going to perpetuate. So I think a small shift is, how am I actually talking about dating? Is it an opportunity? Do I get to meet new people? Can I phrase it in a way that is more positive versus looking at it as such a negative thing? Because if you talk about it so negatively, who would want to do it? Like, oh, this is terrible. Well, yeah, if it's terrible, no one's going to want to do that. Like, you have to actually phrase it in a way that makes you excited about it again.
Absolutely. And how can we protect our peace and keep our standards high without closing ourselves off to love?
Communication. We have to learn how to communicate where our boundaries are. We have to learn to communicate our needs and then see if someone can meet you there and show up. When you're really secure in yourself, you're not really worried about someone, coming out there and changing that for you. You're like, hey, I'm really secure. I'm just going to see if this person aligns. And if not, we're moving on.
I love
That's how you
that.
keep your peace.
Communication really is key. All right. And the last one
Uh-huh.
on all of this is, what gives you hope about love today?
What gives me hope about love today? Ooh, that was actually a hard one.
Right?
For me, I think it's in the space that I'm in. I think working with clients, seeing them change and view life differently and show up differently, that gives me hope, because I know that the situation that we're in our dating scene right now is not hopeless, right?
Right.
But we have to be willing to make changes to show up better. And so I think honestly, like, my clients give me a lot of hope to know that there are people out there who really desire to show up differently and who want to be better, who desire great relationships and want to actually put in the work to make that happen.
Love hearing that. Really love hearing that. Beatrice, really, thank you so much for being here today. You've given our listeners and me and everyone else who's going to be listening to this, you've given us such a powerful way to look at dating and relationships. And, not as something to fear or overthink, but as an
Mhm.
opportunity to grow, heal, and connect from a secure place. Before we wrap up, though, where can our listeners find you, follow your work, or sign up for your coaching?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's Let's Talk Relationships _. You can also go to letstalkrelationships.co and you'll get all the information you need there about my coaching practice. If you are interested in signing up for coaching or wanting to learn more, you can shoot me a DM, or you can sign up on my website and schedule a discovery call and we can chit chat a little bit about kind of where you're at and what support you're looking for.
Amazing. So if you're ready to break your patterns and start dating with confidence, go follow Beatrice Rosu and check out her podcast, Let's Talk Relationships. And to our listeners, if today's episode helped you see dating a little differently, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with someone who might need this message. Until next time, keep healing, keep growing, and keep unlocking the love you deserve. Happy dating. The content in this podcast is for entertainment and is not mental health, medical, or personal relationship counseling. It is not a substitute for professional expertise and judgment from a licensed healthcare or mental health professional. You should seek the advice of a qualified professional when seeking mental health or medical advice to obtain a diagnosis or any treatment regarding your mental health or well-being. The content in this podcast may not be applicable to you and your specific situation. Topics discussed in this podcast may include information that may be considered sensitive or emotionally charged to some people, and therefore listener discretion is advised. References to third-party resources are for informational purposes only, and 52 Inc. takes no responsibility for the content of those resources. This podcast is copyrighted 2025 by 52 Inc., all rights reserved.